In 2024, the world's largest semiconductor company got slapped in the face. Not in a courtroom. Not behind closed doors. In Taiwan. In front of thousands of cameras. By a man in a leather jacket, with a single sentence. That man was Jensen Huang. That company was Samsung. What he said was short, barely one line. But it kept Samsung's engineers awake for months, and made the entire Korean tech industry collectively hold its breath. I'm not going to tell you what he said. Not yet. Here's what you need to know first. Samsung, the company that accounts for roughly a fifth of South Korea's entire GDP, the company that has dominated global memory chip markets for nearly 3 decades, fell out of the top 2 in its own best category in 2025. Micron, an American company, passed them. Then came 18 months of brutal reckoning. Then came June 5, 2026. Seoul's Gimpo Airport. Jensen Huang stepped off the plane, walked toward a mob of reporters, and said something else entirely. The distance between those two sentences is the story of Samsung's worst stretch and its most defiant comeback. Let's start from the beginning. You think you know Samsung? You don't. Samsung isn't just a big company. Samsung is a country inside a country. Koreans have a phrase for it, the Samsung Republic. That's not hyperbole, it's almost a literal description. One company's revenue represents close to a fifth of an entire nation's GDP. In the memory chip business specifically, Samsung ruled for nearly 30 years. More than a third of the world's DRAM memory, the RAM in your phone, the RAM in your laptop, traces back to Samsung. This wasn't a company competing for market share. This was a company that wrote the rules of the market. Then AI arrived, and everything changed. To understand what happened, you need to understand what HBM is. Regular memory is like a single-lane highway, data moves in a line, one car at a time. HBM is like stacking 12 highways on top of each other, running them vertically, and bolting them directly next to an AI chip so data can race through all of them simultaneously. AI training requires moving enormous volumes of data in extremely short windows. Without HBM, even the most powerful AI chip is a paperweight. So what is HBM, really? It's the arterial infrastructure of the AI era. Control the HBM supply chain, and you control the most critical raw material in the entire AI compute economy. And Samsung, the global king of memory, missed the turn. Nobody warned them it would come this fast, or look this bad. May 2024. Taiwan. Computex, one of the biggest annual stages in global tech. Jensen Huang walked out in his signature leather jacket. Every major tech media outlet in the world had cameras pointed at him. A reporter asked, when would NVIDIA start using Samsung's HBM chips? Jensen paused. Then he said, we just need to keep doing the engineering. It's not ready yet. Sounds almost polite, right? Everyone in the semiconductor industry heard exactly what it meant. Translation, your product doesn't meet our standards. Go fix it. Reuters had already reported, citing people familiar with the matter, that Samsung's HBM chips had overheating and power consumption issues, and that tests on both the 8-layer and 12-layer HBM3E had failed as far back as April. Then came the moment that hurt even more. November 2024. NVIDIA's earnings call. Jensen Huang publicly called out his key partners by name, TSMC, SK Hynix, Micron. He did not mention Samsung. Getting left off the list hits harder than getting called out. This was the most powerful chip CEO on the planet, on the most public stage available to him, using silence to announce to the entire world, Samsung is not on my list. Samsung took the rare step of issuing a public apology to investors shortly after, acknowledging that delays in its AI chip business had directly impacted the company's financial results. The company that had dominated memory for 30 years bowed its head for the first time. Let's pause and actually map out the money here, because this isn't just a technology competition. This is a war over who controls the foundational infrastructure of the AI era. Q2 2025. Counterpoint research data. The scoreboard. SK Hynix, 62% market share. Micron, 21%. Samsung, 17% down to third place. Samsung, the largest semiconductor company on earth, had been overtaken by the American upstart in its own home turf category. What does that actually mean in dollar terms? HBM is the single most expensive component inside an AI accelerator. SemiAnalysis estimates it accounts for over 50% of the total packaged GPU cost. When you buy an NVIDIA AI training card, nearly half of what you're paying goes to the memory supplier. SK Hynix's 62% share means, in NVIDIA's AI chips, more than half the memory comes from them. They are the single most critical parts supplier for AI infrastructure on the planet. Samsung's 17% share means, they had effectively been cut out of the supply chain that defines this era. And this isn't just a revenue problem. It's a strategic collapse with compounding consequences. SK Hynix captures more orders. More orders means more cash for R&D. Better R&D means stronger next-gen products. Their lead is a compounding lead. Samsung falls behind, meaning they risk falling further behind. That's the real threat Samsung was staring at, not getting beaten once, but getting permanently left behind. Most companies in this position would default to the safe play, use validated, mature technology, patch what's broken, and slowly close the gap. Samsung didn't. They made a decision that left their competitors genuinely stunned. Youngbei Lee, Samsung's senior VP of memory development, put it plainly, instead of taking the traditional route with existing, mature designs, we made the leap to use the most advanced process nodes available, 1C DRAM and 4 nanometers logic, for HBM4. To appreciate how risky this is, you need to understand HBM's structure. Think of it as a stack of memory chips piled vertically, like a burger. For HBM4, Samsung added an entirely new logic-based die at the bottom of the stack, manufactured in Samsung's own 4 nanometers fab, essentially giving the entire memory stack an intelligent dispatch center. No one had done this in a volume production product before. No blueprint to follow. No one to copy. If it went wrong, the write-down would be in the billions. And then there's yield, the make-or-break variable in any new chip design. Yield means, out of 100 chips you manufacture, how many actually work? Low yield means most of your output is scrap, your costs explode, and your delivery schedule collapses. Reports indicated Samsung's 4 nanometers logic-based die tests had broken through a 40% yield rate, and industry consensus holds that an initial yield of 40% is sufficient to greenlight volume production. They called the right number. Samsung HBM4's power efficiency improved 40% over the previous generation. Thermal performance improved 30%. Total data transfer bandwidth hit 2.7 times the previous generation, fast enough to move 754 GB movies every single second. This wasn't an incremental upgrade. This was a generational leap. January 1, 2026. New Year's Day. Samsung co-CEO Jun Younghyun sent out the company-wide New Year message. And buried inside it was a quote, not his own words, but words that had been said to him by a customer. Our HBM4 has demonstrated differentiated competitiveness. Customers have even told us, Samsung is back. 4 words. 1 sentence. Appeared exactly once in the entire letter. The Korean capital markets lost their minds. Samsung stock surged 7.2% that day, a record closing high. Why did 4 words carry that kind of force? Because the person who said them almost certainly moved in the same circles as the person who once said, "It's not ready yet." This was a company that had been publicly humiliated and was now hearing "you're back" from the very world that humiliated it. There's no harder way to stage a comeback. And no more satisfying one. February 2026, Samsung officially began volume production of HBM4, becoming the first company in the world to do so. Not the one that caught up. The one that got there first. Then came June 5, 2026. Jensen Huang flew into Seoul's Gimpo Airport. Before he'd barely cleared the arrivals hall, reporters swarmed him. He said it plainly. All 3 passed. Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron. All three had cleared NVIDIA's HBM4 qualification certification for its next-generation AI platform, Vera Rubin. All three were in volume production. All three had earned a place on the supplier list. That sentence and the one from 2 years earlier, "It's not ready yet," form a complete circle. But the story isn't over. Clearing certification and winning orders are two entirely different things. Industry analysts estimate that in NVIDIA's Vera Rubin HBM4 order allocations, SK Hynix takes 60 to 70%, Samsung takes 25 to 30%, and Micron gets the remainder. Samsung climbed from 17% back to roughly 25 to 30%. Progress, but SK Hynix's lead remains overwhelming. Bernstein analysts have projected that Samsung's market share could surpass SK Hynix by 2027 and reclaim the number one position. Could. Not will. And SK Hynix is not standing still. On June 2, Jensen Huang publicly called on SK Hynix to accelerate capacity expansion further, warning that global semiconductor supply remains severely constrained. This war is still being fought. The finals are just getting started. Let's come back to that map of money and power. The global HBM market is projected to reach $100 billion by 2030. This isn't a competition between chip product lines. This is a battle for control over the foundational infrastructure of the AI era. Samsung spent nearly 2 years walking one of the most painful and ultimately most defiant roads in modern corporate history, from being publicly told not ready by the world's most powerful chip CEO, to hearing a customer say Samsung is back, to watching that same CEO fly to Seoul to confirm it in person. What Samsung lost was arrogance. And the attachment to a playbook that no longer fit the game. What Samsung reclaimed was the instinct of an engineering company 30 years deep in memory that, when the stakes were highest and the path was least clear, was still willing to push its own most advanced chips onto the table. But this story doesn't have an ending yet. Whether Samsung can actually surpass SK Hynix and reclaim the top spot by 2027, that's still an open question. The answer is being written right now. In every AI server rack being assembled. In every purchase order NVIDIA signs. One chip at a time.